further ado, this is the More Than Music panel, and I'm just going to hand you over to Yaw. All right.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. This is a bit odd because we can't actually see anyone apart from the esteemed panel. But this is More Than Music panel at Resonate Music Conference. And today we're going to be talking about music and how music plays a part in social activism and movements. I'm your moderator. My name is Yaw Owusu. I'm from an organization called the Playmaker Group, which has been run for 10 years. We work across the music industry in a variety of different ways, range from music media content for the likes of BBC and Kiss FM, etc., right through to creative consultancy, where we work with the likes of Levi's, Island Records, Decca Records, etc. And I also work with PRS Foundation, and at this moment I'm working on a project that is an innovative project aimed at helping the music industry be a lot fairer to Black musicians and execs, and we'll be launching that next year. But let's meet the panel. Looking at my screen now, I'm going to start with Claire, who's to my left. So Claire, do you want to just tell everyone a little bit about yourself and what you do? And yeah, and we'll get into it a little bit more detail later. But
yeah,
Claire.
Thank you. Thanks for the intro, and thank you to Resonate for bringing us all together as well. I'm very happy to be part of this team here. So I'm Claire O'Neill, and founder of an organisation called A Greener Festival, or otherwise known as AGF. And we've been working for the last 15 years with the festival and events, and more recently touring and venues, in order to bring sustainability really into the forefront. And that's across all different environmental aspects and also social aspects as well. So it's been quite a journey, and we've seen a lot of evolution over that time, sometimes 2 steps forward, 3 steps backwards, 1 step up, tripping over, falling flat on our faces, getting up again. It's an interesting journey trying to be sustainable. But yeah, that's us in a nutshell, and we'll get into the details later on.
Thank you very much, Claire. Olga, over to you.
Thanks, Yaw. Yeah, my name's Olga Fitzroy, and I'm the Executive Director of the Music Producers Guild. So we represent music producers, recording engineers, mastering engineers, and my campaign is the Selfie Leave campaign. So I started this after I had my son in 2015. I was looking forward to taking some time off work and then going back to work and sharing it with my husband. Turns out, because my day job is being a self-employed sound engineer, as a self-employed person, only the women get maternity leave and dads don't get anything, and they don't qualify for shared parental leave, which obviously has a massive impact on women's careers. So I started the Selfie Leave campaign to get shared parental leave for self-employed people. I didn't really know where to start. I ended up just making a few phone calls, Googling on the internet about who had made up the rules on shared parental leave, and ended up talking to some politicians. Basically just wrote loads and loads of emails and called anyone that I knew that had a slight in politics. And eventually the guys at UK Music introduced me to an MP called Tracy Brabin. And she'd been an actress before she became a member of parliament. And she actually worked with me to get a private member's bill to change the law on shared parental leave. So in 2018, there's actually a law that went partway through parliament to change the rules on shared parental leave so that freelancers could get it. It didn't pass because the government didn't want to support it at that point, but it was still quite amazing to get as far as getting an actual law at the beginning of the process in Parliament. So that's kind of where my campaigning's come from.
Superb. Olga, we'll get back into that later because you've made it sound so easy and so smooth, but it'll be a little bit more how you start a movement that gets all the way to Parliament. Taahliah, over to you.
Hi, I'm Taahliah. I'm an artist, a music producer and a DJ based in Glasgow and also London. I suppose with my work, it's quite politically charged in kind of every aspect. So the DJing aspect, the performance aspect, and then also I would also say I'm a bit of a curator as well. And so in terms of what happened with BLM this year, I kind of organised an alternative protest via Clyde Belt Radio. And I also run a sort of club night / collective called Transversal, which is a space only for, well, a space, I suppose, for trans artists, DJs, performers, poets to kind of showcase themselves. And yeah, I feel like I'll probably get more into that later on, but that's kind of me in a tiny nutshell.
And congratulations, AJ, you're a record breaker now in
history maker, supposedly. That's what people keep saying. It's quite strange. Yeah, thank you so much.
So let's talk about the last 6 to 9 months, obviously with COVID, and obviously a lot of social changes that have taken place, and some awesome movements I've kind of developed during that time, including Let the Music Play, We Make Events, and Black Lives Matter. So we've really seen the music community and interestingly enough, youth very active. But what are your thoughts on any of these movements, and have you been involved in any particular? Taahliah, maybe start with you, because you did mention Black Lives Matter.
I suppose, well, I mean, like, I've been working creatively as an artist for over the past 3 years or something, and I've always created work that's touched on race. And I think that when the murder of George Floyd and sort of the civil unrest happened, I really felt like I wanted to do something. And so what originally that took form as was going to be like a protest at Glasgow Green, but then because of COVID and stuff like that, that got cancelled. So I decided to create more of an alternative protest space. So with the BLM Clyde Belt stuff, that was kind of more about reimagining the ways in which protests during COVID could happen. Sort of through the dissemination of Black art and Black artists, and within sort of the radio space, alongside Black DJs and producers and stuff like that, there was also talks and more educational pieces of information that you could get. So it was more that you could tune in for the full weekend and really try and learn something, rather than obviously show your what's the word, unrest through a physical protest. It's more you're educating yourself, which I thought was quite good. Obviously you can do both, but I think when we're talking about things like systemic racism and sort of structural change, a lot of it comes to do with sort of everyday education. So yeah.
Oh, great. Olga or Claire, how have you found the last kind of 9 months and what you've seen? And because there seemed like there's been a lot of movements, a lot of people probably and groups standing up for what they believe. Have you been inspired by any of this? Have you been involved?
I mean, the Let the Music Play campaign, that was UK Music worked on that quite a lot, and I sit on their board, so I was involved in a lot of those calls. And also before that campaign started, I mean, the whole music industry, I think, was in absolute panic, basically. Everything shut down. There were obviously a lot of points where at first nobody was getting any support, or nobody knew what they were going to get. Then some people got some support. And then there were all these plans for reopening that kept changing. So it was a really stressful time. And I was on a lot of the calls with different parts of the industry. So even though studios were affected in the first lockdown, but they managed to get working again, I was still obviously aware of what was going on with everybody in live. And, we're all one big family, everything affects everything else. So I was on a lot of those calls where they decided kind of what to do, because I think the successful thing about the Let the Music Play was that it was simple and everybody could get behind it. Because on a lot of the calls, people are asking for different things for their specific sector, whether it's VAT off ticket prices or insurance to put gigs on, or all sorts of different things. And I think those are quite detailed things that are hard to communicate. Whereas if you've got a simple message that people that just like music, that don't know about the ins and outs of the music industry, but people that just love music can get behind. I think that's what's effective, just keeping it simple and understandable. And, you know, you can go on into the detail behind closed doors when you're talking to like a minister or an official or something like that. But for a campaign, I think the really key thing is to keep the messaging really simple.
Great point. Great summary, because when you're saying that, I'm just thinking about all the other movements through time that I've heard about or, you know, being involved in, and I think that you links them all quite succinctly. Claire, over to you.
It's been quite an amazing 9 months, I've say, from the perspective of working on, I suppose, environmental sustainability in such detail. It was quite a relief in some respects to stop the unstoppable machine of business as usual and show that actually major change to societal norms is possible and that we're not bigger than the environment. So in that respect, it's been really awakening, I think, for a lot of people. As far as the campaigns, I mean, for instance, to Let the Music Play, it's all been a great opportunity for people to collaborate where normally they wouldn't necessarily. And there's been a much greater openness amongst the industry and across different sections of the industry. But also it's been really interesting to see where we as a whole and as individuals and basically where we apply value and what we think is valuable. It's very clear that a lot of what we put value on ultimately results in a lot of destruction and suffering, because we extract all of our profit and wealth from destruction of the environment and exploitation of people. And so the way that, even looking up a layer from that at how funds are being distributed, there is no value placed on creativity. And when you look at, for instance, different Indigenous communities, they really hold in reverence the creativity, or if you would call it in another way, the connection to some form of spirituality as something that's to be listened to, upheld and revered and honoured. Whereas in our societies, we tend to just completely disregard it as just entertainment and something that's not really necessary. So I think it's been very interesting to see how we've started to really couple the creative industries and that opportunity for people to come together and to express, be that through music or some other art form, as something that's so connected to our well-being and mental health. But I think we've also had time to really be able to hear each other as well. And I think that, for instance, with the Black Lives Matter movement, if the whole world was running around like crazy, super busy as always, like not stopping to reflect, then that could have very easily just been washed over again or not had as much impact as it needed to and it should do. Because it's not the first time that it's happened, and yet because the world is in a kind of point of stasis, I feel like that has opened the doors for us to feel and to see each other a bit more. So that's been my kind of reflections on the various campaigns over the recent months.
I agree. I think that sums it up really nicely. I'm going to go to a question right now. We've got a couple actually, but I'm going to go to this first one by Susan, who said, what are the main challenges with educating and influencing people on a virtual basis? Taahliah mentioned the physical process getting cancelled. Do you feel that it's harder to reach people when you don't have that physical contact? That's up for anybody to answer.
I might have a shot at it first. I think in terms of educating and influencing people on a virtual basis, I do think it's a lot easier to do that because we are so interconnected now through social media and stuff. I know that a lot of people, or maybe that a lot of people that I've come into contact with have learned about sort of social issues and like trans rights and black rights and stuff like that through the internet, because it's not as if the schools are teaching us anything. But in terms of, I suppose, aligning ourselves more with a physical space, I think if you're purely talking about educating people and stuff, I don't know. I'm like, actually, I don't know. I'm not too sure, because obviously it's good that we can virtually educate people, but how easy is it to actually get everyone get willing people into one space and kind of and do that? That seems quite odd now. And also the audience that we're trying to reach, I suppose, aren't exactly the people that are going to come to an event anyway. So, yeah.
Good point. Olga, Claire, to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think Taahliah's made some good points about the fact that virtually you can now meet so many people and reach so many people that aren't physically anywhere near you. And I think that's positive. And I think we've become more creative and imaginative as to who we might consider having a call with or getting to speak at our events, because they can be anywhere. But I feel the kind of negative is that you can't really build new relationships, or it's harder to build those new relationships. So, for example, on the political side, on lobbying, on trying to get MPs or Parliament to do stuff, whether it's providing support for musicians or doing stuff around parental rights, I think, I've drawn on the personal relationships that I've formed before lockdown. And yes, you can have Zoom calls and emails with people, but I think especially right now, everybody's asking for stuff. There's so much noise going on that I think to get through, you sort of need an existing relationship, and it's harder to get through it starting from nothing. So I think it applies to getting work as well. So normally you might have lunch with a manager, or you might go for a drink with someone, or go to a gig, and you form that relationship by being physically in somebody's company, talking to them. And that's kind of how you make things happen, whether it's in politics or doing music. And that part of it is just gone. And I think it's a lot harder to start those relationships from scratch. I think you can maintain your existing relationships, but to start something new virtually is a lot harder, I feel.
Good point. Claire, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with what everybody's said. I think that there's a lot that gets exchanged in communication from being physically present with somebody, whether that's an audience or whether it's somebody that you're going to campaign with, or whether it's someone that you absolutely disagree with to your core. It's really important to actually be able to come together. I think that the breadth of communication that's possible is way more enhanced now for all of those reasons that you've said. We can contact each other anywhere in the world. It's a lot easier to get speakers from a breadth of different areas to debate and discuss. But there is something to be said for the physical connection, and then not only with the collaboration and the opportunity for that, but also with perhaps stepping outside of your bubble, that it's so easy with algorithms to just end up in an echo chamber. So to be able to hear and understand other points of view without it turning into a digital battle, which is a bit like when people drive cars and they become really start shouting at people and swearing at them, whereas you wouldn't do that if you were face to face. Do you know what I mean? But also practically getting out there and doing stuff as well. It's like we can do a lot by campaigning or speaking to each other online, but then sometimes you need to go out and get your hands dirty as well and see what's happening in our physical reality. So I think that we're going to end up in a really great situation because we're learning this breadth and different ways of communication. But then once we're allowed to, again, once we safely can, then we've just got even more tools, I think, to be able to share and hopefully make quicker progress that we really need to.
We've touched on a variety of different movements that have occurred, recently, but even going back, decades. What role does music play in these movements, and what kind of the leading artists and bands doing within those spaces to kind of support the movements?
I think it's a good question. I think a lot of the time when you've got a campaign, whatever it is, you obviously need press coverage to kind of get people interested. And it sounds really sad and shallow, but if you have a celebrity that will give you a quote or support your campaign, then that is what will get you into the papers. Whether it's, and you know, obviously we all work in music, so if any of us have got campaigns, then it really helps to have a successful artist supporting it. And I think there's obviously Let the Music Play had some huge names supporting it. For the Selfie Leave campaign, I managed to get Chris Martin to give a quote. So things like that, you know, they're something small for an artist to do, but it can be so helpful to a campaign to just make it break through the noise and get attention in the media.
Claire or Taahliah?
I think if it's also a way of being able to express maybe complex or dry subjects in a way that can actually resonate with people's hearts and minds, because you could I could sit here and go, oh, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has said that we've got now 9 years to avoid catastrophic degradation to the environment, and everyone will be like, or, you know, you can have an artist that is able to express the same urgency of what we're facing through beautiful music, and it'll capture people and enrapture them to action and to actually feel it and embody it and understand it. So I think that's where music has has the strongest influence, but definitely also on a very practical level, as far as getting the headlines and the media interest and people's interest, like, you know, the clickbait. It's also useful in that respect too. But more and more artists, like you asked about kind of the major artists. Prior to the pandemic, for instance, there was Coldplay, Billie Eilish, Massive Attack, all saying that they wanted to do green touring and kind of putting their necks on the line a little bit, because whilst the artists have great influence, they're also the ones that will get a lot of backlash from people criticizing them if they're going to stand up for any particular cause or rights. So I think that there's a matter of care there as well, because you don't want to kind of put people in the firing line without them being there to back them up as well.
I suppose, interestingly enough, sometimes artists' music or artists get, I wouldn't say pulled into these things, but I think of a song by Kendrick Lamar a couple of years ago called All Right. And I suppose I think it was on the back of Ferguson in the States, and it was used as part of the movements and the marches and the protests. The song was adopted, not something that strategically he done, or what, but it ended up becoming almost like the soundtrack to the movement. And I was listening to a podcast by his mix engineer, Beats by Ali, and he was basically saying mixed by Ali, and he was basically saying to them that was more important than a Grammy, because it was the people decided, and obviously it would have a knock-on effect financially. You know, I don't think we should ignore that, but I think, you know, going back to some of the like the 50s, 60s, 70s, music has always played a role in a lot of the movements. So it's quite interesting that that's the same situation now. Taahliah, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I suppose from an artist point of view, I think one of the main things that I try to do is try to anything that I'm passionate about, or not even just that, but I think it is good in the world, I'll try and promote, definitely. And sort of, if I'm working with a particular team, or if I need to hire people, there needs to be an active kind of thought or thinking towards I'm selecting the right people. I'm able to give opportunities to lesser known artists, or like designers or whatever, especially with queer folk and people of colour. I think sometimes we can be quite naive of the effect that music can have on a certain section of society. I think I maybe more for people who don't necessarily work within the music industry. But I don't necessarily believe in idolising particular people for particular things, especially to do with sort of politics. But I think it's definitely important as people within these roles, and I'm not just talking about roles as artists, but also people who are in the background, like record labels and managers and festival organisers and promoters and things like that. I think it's important that we are obviously working towards bringing a particular change within the industry, and we should be more aware of the obvious effects and things that need to be made, rather than because I think a lot of stuff can be brushed under the rug. And I think if you're not particularly affected by a sort of intersection of identity, so like if you're say you're like cisgendered, it's not as if like a cisgendered person is going to automatically think about sort of like trans rights or like the perspective of a trans person. So there needs to be someone within that team who is trans to then give that, and that works in multiple different ways. That works with like sort of race and gender and all those kind of things. So
thanks, Taahliah. I want to stick with you for a sec and ask you about your music, because you know the fact that you make music that has, you know, activism as a part of it, or you know, as political, I wouldn't say political agendas, but undertones or whatever. Is that something that came naturally to you? And I suppose the second question is, do you think you've benefited, or do you think it's been a burden to kind of have that edge, so to speak?
What was the first question? Sorry.
The first question was, did it come natural to you to develop?
Yeah.
That?
Yeah, it did. So I suppose I need to give like a brief history of like when I was making art. So like I got into art school around 2017. I'm still there, unfortunately, and I studied painting and printmaking, so fine art, and so I started painting. And even when I was painting, a lot of my work was sort of investigating political matter. A lot of it was touching on race. It was kind of before I came out as trans, so a lot of it was touching on gender as well, that I never really sort of dissected as transness. And then I kind of, being at art school and just going out a lot, sort of fell into DJing, which then led me to sort of being quite interested in particular pieces of music and kind of what it meant to kind of like play a set of like only black female, or what it meant to like play a set of only music created by trans people, which then led me on to producing, which sort of is I'm where I am now. So I think with the identity that I hold, it's kind of impossible for me to not politically think about my work in that kind of way, and also just the body I inhabit already is already innately political, because people already sort of view it as the other. So yeah, I don't think it's burdened me at all, or I wouldn't say that. I think anyone who is able to connect with my work in a way and is able to be educated by it, I think that's great. And I don't find it a burden. And if anyone tries and says it's a burden, I just tell them shut up, to be quite honest.
Okay,
I wouldn't want to make any other kind of work. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
do you feel, is there a level of potential pigeonholing then? Do you think your music can reach as far as it should do, or do you feel like there's a level of, because of the content and because of some of the messaging, do you think it won't go as far as it could or should do?
I don't know. I've never really thought about that. I don't think I'm at that place yet to think about that. And at the end of the day, if I'm making the work that I want to make, then I can't really dictate where it goes. If people take it, then people take it, and if they don't, they don't. Because with like all genres of music and everything, like there's going to be particular people that love it, there's going to be particular people that hate it. So I'm not really worried about that. I think artists need to be more vocal in different things. And I think that any artist that has sort of I don't know what the word would be, like a manifesto, or has like politically charged things that are like obviously on more positive terms. I'm not saying that like if an artist is a TERF, we should listen to them. But if they mean good and they mean well, then I think all artists should be like that.
Cool. Thank you very much. I've got one more question from you, coming from Lucas. Said, have you played records at Lunacy? Checkmate. Do you think the licensing laws shutting clubs at 4 a.m. in Glasgow are bad for DJs, or do you think this makes the crowd more appreciative of their time on the dance floor?
I have played at Lunacy. Never played at Checkmate before I got shut down. The licensing laws in Glasgow, yeah, I don't think that shutting clubs at 4 a.m. is good at all. I think it makes people, or it makes consumers, for lack of a better term, hungrier for for club culture, and so they either go to an after party or like an illegal rave or like a flat party or whatever, and so that the duration of the party is gonna be extensive anyway, regardless of whether we shut clubs at 4 or we shut clubs at 8. I think if I compare it to, I used to live in Berlin, and obviously the licensing laws there are just so much different. But I know that in terms of like the duration of a party, I much more enjoyed my time in Berlin, because it was less of a restrictive kind of constantly checking the watch, or like, oh, it's 3 a.m. we've only got an hour left kind of thing, rather than just sort of like we partied until like we wanted to go home. So I don't think it does make the crowd more appreciative of the dance floor. I think maybe like a lot of people in the council or whatever might try and like use that excuse, but I genuinely don't. And I think whatever opportunities that we get to experience music live in like an more experiential way is a brilliant thing. So why should we not have clubs open 24 hours and people can just go and then leave and then that's it, rather than this kind of stigmatized idea of what partying is? Because I think also a lot of people look at partying as a really, really stupid thing when it's not. Like, but there's a full industry behind it, and there's a need for it. Like if an obvious example would be COVID, and like, I'm not saying that the illegal raves that happened are obviously bad. I wouldn't suggest that, but it's the fact that they did happen in the first place obviously shows that there's like a consistent need for it, to the point where people want to disregard people's health, which is obviously not a great thing. But yeah, that's my answer on that.
A quick one on that then, Taahliah, because it'll be interesting. Like, you know, is the 4 a.m. due to impact on residents, or is it just a general rule? Because again, I'm in Liverpool. We've been quite involved. I'm on a music board here, so being involved in Agent of Change. And obviously, the Londoners on the panel will know all about Agent of Change. So to kind of make sure that venues and residential areas can coexist, is that a similar challenge in Glasgow?
Oh God, I don't know if I can really answer that one quite well. I'm not too sure. I'm not too sure on that one. I suppose that a lot of the in this city centre, and so, but there are particular clubs that are quite near residential bits. That's a really terrible answer for that. I'm sorry, I don't really know.
I'm just intrigued. It's like almost like, but if anyone in the chat, anyone who's watching, actually kind of knows what the reason is for 4 a.m. closing, I'll just be interested on a general.
It's dumb anyway. Whatever the answer is, it's dumb. So.
Okay, moving on. Olga, I wanted to speak to you about the Selfie Leave campaign, and obviously before you touched on it, but you made it seem so it was quite poetic and straightforward. But I just think it for the people who are listening, just understanding how you put together a campaign, because obviously there's campaigns and messages that are quite organic, and then there's something like what you tried to do, which was very clear. Can you talk through how you set it up? You know, how you set it up? Did you use celebrities in any way to help move things along? You know, is any tactics, any kind of best practice that you can share?
Yeah, I mean, I was completely new to campaigning and politics when I started this. I had no idea what I was doing. I was basically on maternity leave with a laptop, and I sort of, I think I mentioned before, I Googled sort of who had put these laws in around shared parental leave and got in touch with MPs. And the Music Producers Guild, I wasn't a director at that point, they introduced me to UK Music, who again were really helpful because they're quite experienced at lobbying, and introduced me to Tracy Brabin, this MP that brought in the law. But the sort of, I guess I just wrote to people and said, this is what I'm doing. I started a petition. And then when the day that they actually had this first reading of this law in Parliament, I organised a demonstration outside Parliament. And I got as many musicians that I knew that are sort of vaguely famous to come to this. And I also got quotes from people that I knew couldn't physically come to a demonstration, like Chris Martin. He would just get mobbed if he came to something. I mean, I didn't know if he was in the country at the time, but I wrote to them and said, is there any chance I could get a quote from you supporting this campaign? I can't remember who else I got, but I got a number of musicians to just do whatever they could, whether it was turning up in person, whether it was retweeting, or whether it was providing a quote. And that sort of helped me get stuff in the press. And yeah, we arranged this demonstration, booked a photographer, so we got some really good images that we could share with the press. I approached some trade unions to help pay for the photographer, but it was just me doing it on my own. And UK Music also helped. They were really good at getting MPs to come to the photo shoot. So I just basically just used my address book and kind of talked people into helping me. And I've learned quite a lot over this as well. Like through this campaign, I started working with a charity called Pregnant Then Screwed, who campaign on a bunch of maternity rights. And they've been going a couple of years longer than I have. So I kind of have learned a lot from them. And now I help them out as well. And we kind of, I've found in the music community and also in the kind of maternity campaigns community, there's so much solidarity of people just helping each other out, sharing expertise, sharing contacts. And I think that's been the sort of real thing, is basically if you ask for help, then you will generally get it, because people are good and people want to help. So that's been my main kind of takeaway, and just keeping every little bit of knowledge. Every conversation that I have with someone who's an expert in something, I try and just keep as much knowledge as I can, because there's so many brilliant people out there that I've been able to learn from.
I know this sounds, I don't want to make it superficial, but I suppose there's so many elements of that can be applied to any campaign, can't it? In terms of, even if you're doing a music project and you're releasing it, just knowing how to galvanize support and, I wouldn't say manipulating the press, but, using the rules that the press, the way they work to your advantage of the campaign, etc., etc. So, that's amazing. Claire, over to you. Got one here from. I had one, but I'm gonna go with Susan's one. What are the majors in the music industry doing to combat climate change? Sometimes people can have the attitude that they're just one small dot in a big world, and a lot of these majors are the ones who can inspire lots more to change. So, what are they doing to support that global movement?
Well, from my perspective, I'm mostly involved with the live sector more than the recorded sector. So I can speak from the perspective of the major promoters and the major agents. And it's been really encouraging the last 3 years, certainly the last 2 years, and the last 3 months even more so, because there's some of the biggest promoters in the world, such as Live Nation and AEG, have got very clear sustainability policies that they've released publicly. That now all of their venues and tours around the world, venues and festivals, tours is another subject, are needing to see how they can, for instance, get rid of single-use plastic or reduce their carbon emissions drastically by 2025. And it's like we were saying before with the influence, when large organizations like that make statements, looking from the environmental perspective, for instance, it gives the green light to innovators and to suppliers to kind of get behind new solutions, because they know that there's a market there. it's quite hard because with any major organisation, be it in the recording or the live industry, they're quite unwieldy. And so to get lots of different countries all aligned on the same objective can really take time, but there's definitely an appetite there. The same with the agents as well. We launched in 2016 a Green Artist Rider with Paradigm Agency, or it was actually Coda at the time, and they're since combined with Paradigm. And that was to bring the artists on their roster to present this Green Rider when they're connecting with any venue or festival, to say what they want to be implemented for the sustainability of their tour, essentially. And that sparked a huge number of really positive conversations also with the arenas or the venues along the routes. So it does take that kind of up-down approach, but we've definitely found from the live side, it's been more of a grassroots push that's happened. If we look at other sectors, like for instance, there's We're Albert is a sustainability organisation for the TV and film industry. And they had very much a top-down approach. So they had the likes of BBC, etc., coming in and saying, like, all of the chief executives are saying, this is what we're going to do now. We've got these objectives to improve our sustainability. And so they fund the various work that happens, and it kind of filters down in that way. So that's quite a long-winded, bigger shell.
When you reference like the likes of BBC or, some of the top organizations, or you mentioned the record industry probably being a little bit behind with that, where would the pressure come from them? Will it be artists speaking out, or will it be
I wouldn't want to say that the majors are behind, like the major record labels, because I don't work with them closely, so I just can't refer kind of intimately to the work that they're doing. They may well be doing a huge amount of work that I'm just not privy to, so I don't want to say they're not doing it. But I mean, certainly artist pressure and audiences. So, well, what makes the money for the organisation, and that's where the pressure comes from. However, having said that, legislation is always going to be a big influence, and I think that this is something that's certainly impacted the live industry, or will do more so. Again, a lot of it's related to the environmental aspect of sustainability, but conversely, in all areas, once you're not allowed to do something anymore, then that's it. You have to change. So it's a kind of a to and fro of peer pressure, customer pressure, and then legislation as well. The three-pronged approach.
Cool, perfect. I've got one main last question, so if anyone else has got questions, do let us know. But looking forward, like we talked about COVID and how COVID's given people a chance to reflect, and a lot of these movements kind of really gained power during this period. As we look forward to 2021, a vaccine and things getting back to the old normal, not the new normal, do you think that, like, what do you think the impact of going back to how things were post-March will have on you all to give your thoughts on?
I suppose in terms of the sort of BLM side of things, I hope that venues and clubs are a lot more aware of their bookings and diversify their bookings a lot more. Like, they already needed diversify like before COVID, and then obviously the sort of everything that happened over the summertime. But now more than ever, I think there needs to be a push for really holding these spaces accountable for their actions. And sort of like, why is the lineup still the same? Like, 3 like white cis straight DJs. Like why is that? Like what are you getting from that? And why are you not providing more of a space for people? Because at the end of the day, it's needed, and people are going, like you said, people are going to push back, because it's at the end of the day, the audience is what pays the bills, I suppose.
Do you think on the Black Lives Matter, a lot of the pledges that came forth in June and July from big organisations, do you see any potential challenge with going into a new year? Do you think, I want to say, do you think a lot of that stuff be left in 2020? Do you think there'll be a lot of companies that won't actually deliver, or do you think there needs to be a body that makes
I think
them
there
accountable?
definitely needs to be a body that makes them accountable. Obviously, can't really see into the future, so can't really see what's going to happen. But I think that I don't know, something just feels quite different about what happened this summer compared to all sort of the other instances. And there was a really, really, I don't know if anyone else felt it, but there was a really big shift in energy, I felt. Even just the fact that obviously what was happening it was mainly happening in the US, but sort of nationally there was so much civil unrest within the UK itself, and so I hope that because of that energy that it's not kind of brushed under the carpet, and more spaces provided in all the industries, not even just in music, but obviously within the music industry, a lot of work needs to be done as well.
Great. Olga, what are your thoughts about, what will 2021 look like once we're kind of all back scrambling around, packing ourselves onto trains and planes and all that? Do you think a lot of these movements will change?
I think in the music industry, from kind of conversations that I've had, I think there is a real genuine will to change, to actually not just have a bunch of cis old white men in charge, and to give fair opportunities to people of colour, people of different genders, women, disabled people. I think there's a will. How much will actually be done? I think it requires a lot of work from everybody, not just people putting out nice statements, but I do think that a lot of the statements are genuine and people do want to do better. But I also think there's a responsibility of the government to stop minoritized groups being discriminated against in the workplace, because currently we're having women and people of colour being made redundant at much faster rates than white males. And the government's infrastructure projects that they want to kind of rebuild the economy, they're all in traditional male industries. So I think individually in the music industry, I'm cautiously hopeful, but in terms of what the government is doing, they're doing absolutely nothing to kind of address the structural inequalities that all these minoritized groups face. And that's what I'm quite concerned about. And I think it's also very hard at the minute for people to enforce the rights that they do have under the Equalities Act, because of the fact that it's so hard to get an employment tribunal, because of the time limits on tribunals, all these structural things, I think, that are responsibility of government, they're the things I'm much less hopeful about.
You know what? I've never had someone present it like that. You might have to start a new campaign, because that does seem like it's quite immediate. And if we all sit around and miss that one, we're all going to see the impact of it for a long time. So, Olga, thanks for that. Claire,
absolutely, Olga, I'll be behind that campaign as well. So, I think that the pandemic has been a blow that's shaken off a lot of old dead wood. And I think that when we come back, because we've had the chance to really reflect on all of this and so many amazing movements have gained momentum, that it definitely won't go back to how it was. But I think there is a risk of complacency, and just, 9 months of something different is not that long to change decades of entrenched habits and behaviours. And so we really need to make sure that we keep pushing for these campaigns when things come back online. I think it's going to be a really bumpy first year, and it's going to be a bit of a kind of scattered approach to scrambling back into business, because, for instance, if you in an ideal world would want to plan a really carefully laid out tour that takes into account all of the diversity, the opportunities, the environmental sustainability, and yet you've had no work for a year and someone offers you a random gig over there, you're quite likely to go and take it, So I think it'll be a rocky first year, but we're not going to go back to how it was, especially with Olga leading the campaign to change the governance policies.
On the kind of the work around, you know, greener festivals and live music industry broadly, is there a bit of negotiation on your side or in the side of the people involved, because all of a sudden there's going to be, no pun intended, a green light come maybe April, May to do live events, and maybe some of the targets for 2021 might have to be, you know, lessened or cast aside? Or is it pretty much, no, this is what you've committed to, or this is what we're saying, regardless of how is it?
I think it's well, we've been meeting up every 2 weeks and then every month since April, meeting with all of the festival organisers that do the Greener Festival Awards, and we've been looking at what are going to be the impacts of the pandemic practically. How are they going to threaten some of the sustainability objectives, for instance, around public transport or around plastic waste and PPEs, personal protective equipment, and what are the threats to reusables and things like this. But then conversely, we've been looking at what are the opportunities. So we know that it's safe to use reusables if they're looked after properly, but also there's local networks being established instead of having just huge events with the same international headliners again and again. It's becoming more diverse because of the necessity to look at, well, what is available, what's around, and so it's causing people to think differently. But at the moment, the big question mark is over whether events can happen at all, and if it's going to be socially distanced. Is anybody even going to do a festival, because festivals don't really lend themselves to a socially distanced scenario, like neither does a club night really, in my opinion anyway. So there's still the appetite. Certainly the head promoters are still sticking to their policies, and we'll just have to see and keep.
Great. And then one last one for you all before we get shut down is, how can any Resonate Music music industry conference members, delegates, get involved in any of the stuff that you are involved in terms of any of the movement side of things that you guys are involved in? Start with Claire maybe, and then we'll go back in the pattern we came up in. So Claire,
yeah, so we've got a few things. There's on our website, which is greenerfestival.com, there's an area for the Green Artist Rider, which is accessible to download, so anyone can take that, comment on it, start to implement it, give feedback, and then we also have training. So those who are in the live industry that want to start to implement training for sustainability, that's something that we've got the next one on the 8th of February, and then we have our Green Events and Innovations Conference with the International Live Music Conference on the 2nd of March, and so that's really open for people to come and get involved with, and if they're working on projects as well or have ideas to put forwards, then we're very open always to hear from people and to answer any questions as well.
Superb. Thanks, Claire. Olga, anything? You seem to be involved in a couple of things, but anything that you're passionate about that you can advise anyone to get involved?
Yeah, so I've just put Parental Pay Equality website in the chat. That is the Selfie Leave campaign. It's been a bit dormant during COVID because I've been trying to work in the music industry during COVID. But in the new year, we're going to start back up again because I think there'll be opportunities to push the government to make changes. I think also if anybody is struggling with an employer or are self-employed and need advice to do with maternity discrimination, www.pregnantthenScrewed.com. They have a free legal advice line, so you can get advice on your rights at work, which I think is quite important at the moment as well.
Thank you very much. Taahliah?
I actually don't really know. I think I'm planning on, well, I have the idea to sort of do a similar BLM Clyde Belt sort of radio takeover soon, perhaps in the new year. I'm definitely doing another transversal club night, and like at the beginning of next year as well. I suppose just being more involved. It's kind of it's harder when you're an artist and you're not really involved in specific movements, I suppose. But I would just say
Everyone should just follow. Everyone should just follow you then, and
Yeah,
you'll
everyone
make
should
sure
just
that
pay.
if it's important, you'll tell them about it.
Yeah, everyone just yeah. I suppose that's the only thing I can say really is if you really want to keep up with me, then follow me on Instagram.
Perfect. You got to put your art in the
Oh yeah, I'm
in the chat. So and then
I'm just jumping back in here, guys. It's been a great conversation. I have lots of chat in the chat box. And I guess I just wanted to ask Yaw, I guess, where people can find out more about PRS Foundation and the work you're doing with Power Up, and maybe you can just talk about that for a couple of minutes.
Yeah, so Power Up is, I don't even know if I'm allowed to get into detail. We haven't launched it yet, but you know what the hell. Power Up is an initiative to support Black music creatives from across the UK and executives. It's kind of a holistic program which will not just be a funding stream and a participant program, which will be every year we'll be funding 40 artists and execs, so 20 each from across the UK, to kind of help them break through a glass ceiling, and whatever that glass ceiling is, it'll be relative to that artist or that exec. And then there'll be a program of development, so that could be senior leadership training, that could be, you know, whatever's needed. So it's quite robust, and as far as I know, nothing like this has ever existed. But on top of that, there's the movement side, which is lobbying organizations, major labels, funding organizations, to make sure that there's equality in those spaces as well, because again, Black artists and organizations are funded less than other organizations. So, you know, that's something majorly that we also will need to look at. So we're launching in January. So it's quite exciting, some really good partners involved. So yeah, in the midst of that. So yeah, PRSfoundation.com, you'll get all the information about all the programs that PRS do. But if you keep checking that, you'll definitely hear about this funding stream and this project in January.
Yeah, that's pretty much the exclusive there. I think it's just unveiled something that probably wasn't meant to be unveiled.
That was a curveball, but that's
sorry
all good.
about that, yeah. We've actually got one of our Resonate Live artists who's performing on YouTube tonight from 7, Jubemi, who's an artist, hip-hop artist called Ben. He's just asking where he can hit you up and get your contact details. So
yeah, I'll put it in the
fabulous.
chat now.
Yeah, I guess we're almost at time, so it's a good time and place to sort of wrap up. Just wanted to, first of all, say thank you so much to you all for getting involved. It's a really important conversation, I think, that we've had, and these have all put forth some really important information and points. So huge thanks. You're more than welcome, obviously, to stay around all day on Hop In. We've got lots more panels, and you can chat to people direct using the chat box inside. And I guess, unless there's anything else that anybody wants to throw in just as a last comment, otherwise I guess we'll can call it a day.
Thank you. Thank you so much,
guys. It's been a great panel.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we'll catch you soon. If you just want to press the leave box in the top right hand corner, and we'll catch you all soon. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.